Okay, we're live. Welcome, family. This is part two, and it is entitled, Are You Marriage Minded or Just Looking for Fun? Do you know the difference? Welcome, my panelists. Um, Everyone, introduce yourselves. I am Anuket, and this is Women's Corner TV. And tonight, we're going to hit that part two on the relationships, and we're going to dive in deep because I feel if we don't acknowledge the pain, there is no chance for healing. So tonight, we have our sister Sabrina. Say peace to the family, Sabrina.
Love and light family.
We also have in the building Sister Angelica.
Peace, family, love, and light.
And we have our dear brother Adonis in the building to give the male perspective.
Peace, Queens. Thank you for having me once again.
Welcome everyone. Okay, I wrote something to kind of set the mood, the tone, and the direction I would like the conversation to start off with. So it's very short, but I think it kind of hits the point on some of the dysfunction um, we seem to be having between male and female. So here it goes. Is it all superficial? What is it you see when you look at me? A wife, a lay for the night, a check, a mother, a father, a companion, a friend, a future, or your past? Is it all superficial? And I jotted that down because I think where we go wrong in relationships, we're dealing with the superficial, the pretty face, the handsome face, the paycheck in the pocket, the fat you know what. We don't take the time to have a conversation to know if the person you are interested in, for whatever your reason is, feels the same or has the same direction as you do. Some people are looking for marriage, commitment, and some people are just looking for fun. And it's never really discussed in first introductions and courting and in the beginnings of a romantic relationship. So it seems very superficial to me. And that's where we fall short. Now, I think if people were 100 with each other and really just took a look inside and outside, a lot of the pain we cause to one another wouldn't exist. I don't know how the panel feels about that, but that's just something that came to my mind today because I am on Facebook. I don't do any posting. I do a lot of feed reading. And this has been a hard week on relationships. I see brothers crying, and I'll start with the brothers because that's who I mostly see posting the breakup of a relationship they've had this week and how it has affected them. Some of the posts really gears toward that females are playing games with the brothers. They say they want a good man. The man says he wants a good woman. Then why aren't we connecting? So I had to share that post on my Google Plus, which I post mostly on, because that is definitely profound for me. We all say we want that good person by our side, but are we really going after that good person, or are we superficial in our decision making when we choose to deal with somebody? And that's my opening to this broadcast tonight. If anybody wants to chime in on that, please do, and then we can move this along. Does anybody have anything to add on that? Disagree, agree, thoughts?
I have some thoughts on that.
Speak up.
All right, so forgive me, there might be a little bit of an echo. I don't got my headset with me, so I try to be as clear as possible. But I tend to do the same thing. As I've let go of all my friends and people I used to deal with that I feel like weren't on the same maturity level as me. Um, and I started going around more conscious circles. And somebody said something yesterday. Forget consciousness. Like, I want to attract righteousness. And I felt like that was so on point, because as I elevate I could say my consciousness, I start seeing that as well. Where, okay, it's not just about attracting conscious people; it's attracting righteous conscious people, because you can be conscious and still be on the wrong side as well. And when that happens, I'm in a circle and I see, men and women mingling and talking and stuff like that, but I never see anyone developing a great relationship out of that. And so my takeaway from that is, just from my perspective, it seems like when two highly conscious people are around one another, or even a collective, it seems like our egos kind of get in the way of fitting into those relationship roles. And that's just my little chime in regards to this topic right here, is that from my perception, it seems like it's kind of difficult, even though it's like a dream come true. And I'm not trying to speak for everybody else, but I could say for me anyway, to imagine being with a conscious woman who's on the same level, or even on a level that inspires me to get to a higher level or whatnot. That's like a dream come true for me. But I've been in situations where it just seems like we end up having a conflict, because we're both trying to show off our intelligence instead of instead of what's the word? Instead of complimenting one another.
I 100% agree with that. Anybody else want to chime in on my opening statement on, are you marriage minded or just looking for fun?
I will in a second. Just hold. I'll be right back. I will in a second.
Sabrina, do you have anything to add to that? Because I'll just, okay. How I see it, and for whatever reason, there's a big disconnect between the male and female, the Black male and female, the American of African ancestry relationship seems to fall short of the glory. I know in our last conversation we talked a little bit about, you know, polygamy. We talked a little bit about you know, women who have been hurt by the brothers and the brothers' perspective on what they deal with the sisters. And I would just like to elaborate a little bit more on that so we can open that wound that we all carrying around and give an opportunity to heal. So when you're in your next situation on dating someone, you'll have a much clearer idea on how you should go about dealing with that person. Because Brother Adonis, it was me who said, let's forget the conscious community. We need to start getting righteous. And we need to start treating each other in a righteous way. I think honesty, 100% honesty is what needs to be the first and foremost whenever we're dealing with someone. Because we females sometimes think that brothers don't have feelings, that they're all just dogs looking to lay with all the women they can. And brothers seem to think that the sisters are so strong-minded that all we want is to be men. And I had a conversation with Sister Angelica the other night after we had our stream. And yes, we ladies do want that strong supportive man, the protector and the provider. We want that. It's inherently something we need. We don't want to live in fear that we're not going to be provided for, especially when we have children. So when a woman puts the pressure on the brothers to step up their game, it is not to belittle, even though we may go at it in a belittling way. And we do need to change the way we approach the brothers in conversation and asking, I won't say demanding, but asking and telling what we need. You guys seem to think that we are just hardcore, pounce on you. But in actuality, it is to get you motivated.
I was wondering if I could chime in right here.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, and I agree somewhat to what you're saying in regards to the motivation, but I relate 100%, 110% to this particular subject right here, and so what I can say is that type of motivation. Um, I'm really hard on myself, and most black men that I've befriended are pretty hard on themselves too. They hold themselves to a pretty high standard, and when you do that internally, you're pretty rough on yourself in order to do that, in order to constantly try to outdo what you've done before, and you know, set yourself to a high standard. Internally, you have an inner voice most likely that, you know, is pretty harsh in regards to judging yourself in order to push yourself further. And so I would say that, you know, in my situation, in my experience, because I had at one point a nuclear black family as well, but I had married around the time we were in a recession, and well, I should say I had my son around the time we were in a recession, and married around the time we were coming out of it or whatnot, and it was very hard to you know, work full time and or keep a full time job and and provide for my family. I found it very hard, and because the sudden situation of having a son while I'm in college, um, and having to stop everything I'm doing when I'm not prepared to, uh, it was hard to adjust. But in choosing to do so, I thought that there would be an understanding there that things take time, and like they say, Rome isn't built overnight. But what ended up happening ultimately was the pressure of being being compared to 50-year-old men who are engineers and who've already found their niche and things like that and are making 100K, 200K and stuff like that at this moment in time. And so um, that ultimately ended up ripping our family apart or whatnot. And I can say that I was always motivated, thus doing the things that I've done in the past and doing the things that I do now. And now I'm in a situation where, say, if she was the right woman or whatnot, then we would have worked through something. And with the current things that I've been blessed with today, we would have been on our way towards building something very, very, very dope. And so, I see that happening with a lot of other type of races in their relationships or whatnot. And I just don't think that type of motivation is conducive to a positive relationship. I think it's one that leads to a lot of competition, and it makes you want to compete against your sibling rather than come together.
Sister Angelica, you want to chime in? Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I just wanted to kind of quickly add, when we're talking about relationships, I think we need to keep any, you kind of get into relationships and you period where you're really in love with that person. You want to spend as much time as you can, and you enjoy talking to them all hours of the night, and you feel like this nostalgia of being back in like middle school and high school, and everything is really good. And you guys, because of those shared enjoyments that you get with each other, you decide to pursue on into a exclusive, or however is lined out sort of relationship. And I think, to me, what kind of runs afoul in most relationships, and this is from my personal experience as well, is when we don't have like the hashtag relationship goals. Like, we both equally have our own individual objectives that we're trying to accomplish, whether that be getting a promotion at your job, or finishing your education to get this degree to get a better job, or whatever the situation is. But we don't really line out or spell out collectively as a unit these goals that we have, whether it be to fix our credit so we can buy a home, or start a business, save money, or to open up a 529 account for the kids, and just out things that we see collectively with each other. Because we go through this thing again, we get into these relationships and we're just there, we're just present. Let's go to the movies, let's go out to dinner, let's chill at home, let's cook together, let's do this. And we go through all these dates, and then when we run out of dates to go on, we're starting to look at each other like, okay, what's next? And to me, those what next need to be conversations that are had early on, and they need to be reevaluated as often as possible when one person in that relationship is feeling unsure, doubtful, or even sometimes resentment, because that comes when one person feels like they're pulling more slack than the other. So for me, I think that we really need to be mindful about what we're getting into when we're getting into these relationships, because if we're just getting into them just for the sheer enjoyment of that person, then we leave all these other possibilities or gateways or doors open to be resentful or bitter, or feeling uncared for by the other person. So again, we just need to be a bit more mindful when it comes to relationships, and we need to be a bit more mindful when it comes to ourselves, because even within that, people grow. You know, you may be starting out where and finish your college education or trying to get this promotion at your job, and then all of a sudden, you know, through this growth, you click and say, you know what, I want to go left field with this. And then you start making these adjustments and these moves based on what you're thinking is best for your life, and that can be throwing a whole monkey wrench into the relationship. So, like I said, I think we need to be a bit more mindful. But I'll leave it at that for right now and just open the floor for somebody else to chime in.
We've been joined by IMU. Greetings, my brother. Thank you for joining us tonight. As you can see, the title is, Are We Marriage Minded or Just Looking for Fun? You know, speak to the family out there and say hello.
Well, hello everybody and greetings, and I hope everybody is safe and doing well, and it's good to hear from everybody. Are we looking for marriage? Or we just want to play? I say that it's play. Marriage is just a form of words, and people don't take it seriously. Marriage is being in a bonding thing, and that's why they call it a husband, because it puts a band on the man, and it shows his ownership. So we talked about that at the last show about ownership and how that turns out. So I'm looking at it because I think you and I spoke about something in the back chat in reference to um, how to decide on it. And I'm saying that nature decided, you know, sperm and egg. So sperm and egg pretty much decided on what was supposed to happen between us. And then all of a sudden, man came up with a way to nullify certain group of people's numbers in a certain area on the planet and try to minimize the growth of another people. So I'm saying quite naturally, what has happened is we've been duped and dropped into a trap door, not realizing that our numbers will constantly increase while another numbers will never increase to our level. So they had to come up with these laws, marriage, relationships, and so on. We fell into the trap door of that. So marriage is just a term. Commitment, it should be the real term we should be using, and we shouldn't let others define what it means to us as a whole, as people. We have fallen into all these terms and words. It gets away from the action, and we need to get back to the direction and what we're going to be under. Like I said, if we're going to go under the past, are we going to go under this doctrine, or are we going to create a new one? And I feel we need to create a new one that helps us with our circumstances right now. And that's pretty much what I'm going to say about that. I think that we need to find a method that works for us today.
I agree. I agree, man. Like I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. I think the worst thing that we can do is adapt to their ideals of what marriage is, and I think that's where we fell at. I think yeah, I think if we seek partners that meet our standards and we don't settle, and then when we join into union, if we decide whatever that union is, we decide what that is. You know what I mean? Like if you're someone that likes how you guys were talking about yesterday, you know, I forget the damn religion, where you're able to marry multiple wives or whatever. You have multiple wives. I can't think of it right now, but if that's the kind of people you attract, then and you guys are open about that, then that's what you have, and then that way it's not a forceful thing or whatnot. But if you attract someone else that believes, and you guys both you know, equally believe that marriage is whatever you guys come to the terms, whatever you guys agree with or whatnot, then that's the most beautiful bond that you can have, because you guys are actually one versus like forcing an ideology that, you know, came from what you're forced to believe is the ideal of marriage. And I truly believe that's where we are feeling out, man. I agree. You know, like yeah, most definitely.
we I want to jump to the latter part of the title, which is the fun part, which is I think what we are actually doing to each other when we decide to deal with someone of the opposite sex. We're just having fun. And what happens is someone gets hurt because it's not fun for them. They're looking for marriage, commitment, whatever that definition is for them. That's what they're looking for. And I think when brothers and sisters meet up with each other, it's too much superficial fun happening. I like the way you look. I like the car you drive. I like the money in your pocket. And someone gets hurt behind that, male and female. So how do we get the people to start now thinking about the righteousness of dealing with another human being's feelings and emotions that go into sexuality? Because we are sexual beings. We just don't do it to recreate life. We do it for pleasure. And sisters would say, oh, he's just a dog. He only calls me up for that booty call. I'm trying to have something with this brother and he doesn't see it. What's wrong with me?
I think if that's the case, then that line should have never been crossed. If a woman's gonna feel like the man's a dog because the person that she decide to have sexual relations with isn't as serious as her or looking for the same type of things, well then you're wrong for having taken to that step to where you're gonna allow yourself to emotionally feel damaged and whatnot in regards to the rejection of the person being as serious as you are. And I think that I think we have to be honest, because at the end of the day, there's all kinds of people out there in this world, and it's never going to be where it's just there's everyone has different ideals of what a relationship is first and foremost. And I just think in the beginning you got to be honest that this is my ideal. Does that line up anywhere with what your ideal is? Yes, no. If not, then we probably should not even be talking anymore, because anything further than this, we are playing games. And so I think that even if you feel like you're a serious person and want a serious relationship with somebody, if you sat down or laid down, I should say, with somebody who you knew wasn't serious or might not have the capabilities of being on that level that you want to be on, then I believe you're playing the game as well. And so, at the end of the day, I just think it's about honesty. I think one of the reasons why we're not is because both parties, even the ones that are playing games and just want to have sexual relations, at the end of the day, they don't want to be alone, and they do potentially might want to have something at the end of the day that could be long term, and that's where the dishonesty comes in, because they're not able to be brave enough to say, I kind of do want something more long term, but at the same time, I don't know how to be as disciplined. They don't know how to bear their soul, basically. You know what I mean? So I just think if you're able to sit down with somebody and keep it as honest as possible, and be able to pick up on cues and know if they're doing the same, then that's the beginning grounds of figuring out if you guys are able, or should be able to coagulate in regards to having a great relationship, or if y'all should just have fun together, and if that's something that you guys want to do mutually or whatnot.
You're 100% right, but in my experience, because I try to be as honest as I can, and I will say for some women, Maybe not all. I can only speak for me. Sometimes you get nervous being around a brother, and you're not able always to speak your piece, speak your conviction, which is wrong. We should be strong enough to say it. We tend to think, or I used to tend to think, that if my actions should be strong enough for you to gravitate towards me. I'm a homebody. I believe in family strongly. I'm committed. I don't believe in dating more than one person at a time. And you get to the point where you kind of have that fear that if you get too heavy straight out the park, you're going to chase this person away. And because we are communicable people, humans, we need affection, we need conversation, we need company. We tend to accept bad behavior. Sister Zora, who's not with us tonight, an elder, shared some things in the last live stream about the pain and the cheating that she had to endure in her marriage. And it was lines being crossed. And at a certain point, you don't want to cross those lines anymore. You see, when you're young, you tolerate a lot more. As you get older, you become a little bit more accepting of certain situations for whatever reason, children, career, the things you accumulate together. And as you get up there in certain ages, then you just become complacent with the situation. And what that means for me is I no longer want to deal with anyone because I'm not willing to even let you even come near the line. Forget about crossing it. You can't come near it. And if I see you even approaching it, I don't want to deal with you anymore. And a lot of women are angry and really alone, which is the most tragic of it all, because I don't think people should go through life alone. So how do we get the people to understand that it may be hot and heavy what you need early on in the relationship, but it is a necessary evil in lack of a better term, that we need to have with each other without fear. And brothers need to start being honest right along with the sisters. How do we move towards not having the fear of even loneliness in a younger age and not being so accepting of bad behavior? Anybody want to chime in on that?
I think the reality, like you said, is that people want to feel like they belong to something. And then, more importantly, people want to feel like they belong to someone and with someone. And like you said, and I think that kind of segues from our conversation the other night, we're, regardless of what we like to believe of ourselves, we're still creatures on this planet. We're living organisms just like any other animal on this planet, any other living, breathing thing on this planet. And, we're social creatures and we need to feel, we have to survive in groups. We can't survive alone. And with that being said, for a lot of us, and I always go back to this, but our self-identities are heavily influenced by our environment. And it takes a lot for one to kind of move away from that and then start defining their own value system of themselves. And with that being said, when we start going into these relationships, especially for women, more importantly, who go into these relationships and are not really sure who they are. And I'll use an example. I have a girlfriend, she's a neighbor of mine, and she's been married for several years. She's a newly married young mother. Both her and her husband are professionals. And I'm listening to her talk, and she's talking about all these things and how she's stressed out and she really wants to have another baby and so on and so forth. And the only thing the question that kept popping in my head was, who are you? And then I asked her, what do you enjoy? One more.
That's deep.
And she, it's a hot mess over here with the baby. But here, sweetheart, here. Go on, take it. And so I'm like, well, what do you enjoy? And she's like, my husband and my son, so on and so forth. And I'm like, no, like, what do you enjoy? And she had to stop for a second, and she's like, I don't know. And we get so involved in other people and pleasing other people that we kind of lose sight of ourselves. And we don't really take the time to invest in ourselves in a way that we can express our wants and our desires and our feels and be vulnerable and really raw in our communications in a way. And I have an extremely hard time talking about this myself. I am a walking, breathing example of this. But we have a hard time really expressing those true emotions, like, somebody, your partner displeased you, and you can't really articulate that moment and how you felt in a way where you're not being deconstructive in that conversation, but just trying to get them to understand your point of view in that moment. And a lot of this is heavily influenced by the fact that we haven't taken enough time for ourselves. So when we're dealing, speaking about these women, it's like we get into these relationships and we want these men to be like, I even have two definitions for, well, I think a lot of times when we're talking about relationships, understanding and acceptance, we kind of use them in the same context, but they really mean two different things. Like for women, what we really, really want is for a man to just be okay with us, flaws and all, and still love us for all of our quirkiness and all the irritating things that we do, and sometimes how we nag and complain, and we don't, we're asking him, well, do I look fat in this dress, or do you still love me if my hair was looking crazy the next morning? We want a man to tell us yes and answer these questions with yes. However, because we allow the environment to influence our own perception, we have a hard time communicating these things in a way that is beneficial to the relationship. Like we'll ask certain questions, well, what are you thinking about? So you can open up the dialogue to, this is what happened to me today. Or we'll say things like, I'm not really feeling.
Sister, you're gone. What happened? You were going in. I was loving it.
In my back.
You're back.
Okay. So yeah, like we use all these, and again, I am a walking, breathing example of this. I will lie to you not. We use all these innuendos and indirect things to try to get men to ask us the right questions, because we have an inability to be really vulnerable in our communication. Because like you said, we're afraid that once we really open up that raw version of ourselves, like that purest form of ourselves, that will be rejected. So again, I was talking about how I have a difference between understanding versus acceptance. For me, and this is just how I define it, this is not in a book, but for me, understanding is observing a thing and then just being able to coexist with its presence without interrupting it, without interfering with it, without trying to impose your point of view or impose the way that you see things on it in a way where they are forced to reject their own. And acceptance to me is one side of a coin, where if we accept something, that means we take that opinion or that point of view onto ourselves. But on the flip side of that coin, we also have the option to reject it if it doesn't suit our way of being or our way of thinking. So I just wanted to kind of clarify this. That's just what I think about understanding versus acceptance. However, even in our communications, a lot of times what I see, and again, through my own experience, we're looking for that other person to accept. That means for them to neglect their emotions, their opinions, and their feelings about the situation or whatever the topic is, and remove themselves from that, and then to take on ours. And we have to stop doing that. When we communicate, we have to walk into these conversations with the thought and the notion of understanding, not, well, this is how I feel, and if you don't agree with it, then the hell's you. Or I don't understand why you don't understand why I'm thinking this way. The reality is that everybody has their own opinion, and everybody views life through their own eyes, and they come to these conclusions by how they function in the environment and how they view themselves. And until we're able to kind of remove ourselves from that acceptance form of communication, or acceptance and rejection form of communicating, and start talking in a way of understanding, then we'll start to be able to break down those walls a little by little and be able to start giving and showing those glimpses of our core self, not necessarily the agreeable person that especially us as women, we try to be. We always try to be, very agreeable. And I understand what you're going through. And sometimes we don't even know what the hell that we're talking about. We just have that sympathy and that empathy for what's being said and presented in front of us. So I'll just leave the floor for somebody else to chime in.
Beautiful sentiments, sister. I want to pose a question to you, because you're a married man, and I want to dive in so the single brothers and sisters can talk or hear what is the commitment of marriage. What does it entail to be married, committed to someone? Because it seems like the younger brothers say, well, that's the white man system, or I don't want to be locked down to one woman. What is commitment to a woman? What does that entail, so the brothers can understand? And also, how do you keep your marriage solid? What are some of the foundations that you use to keep your marriage solid? Because I think that's something we need to hear from someone who's in it, has experienced it, and because there's tools to that. Too much divorce, too much family court, I'm not worrying about it someone else's community. I'm talking about ours. Too much. Too much not even trying it. What does it mean to be committed to that woman? And how do you keep it solid? If you don't mind sharing your experience. Thank you.
I really don't mind sharing mine, but to be honest with you, the whole thing of marriage is insanity. It's ludicrous, and it should never really take place because we are adapting to somebody else's cultural idealism, which should not happen. So, I will say this much: the reasons why I got married the second time around was strictly because of documentation of being in the military, so my children had those benefits for educational purposes. Uh, when you talk about commitment, one thing it is that this extension of commitment to someone else also takes away from some of your commitment to yourself, and that needs to also be realized. The thing of it is that nature decided long ago how things were going to be. Males got quite a bit of sperm count, and females got only so many eggs. So, as far as us as a species, we need to go back to that estimate or that way of looking at things. Now, we're talking about we're going to say about commitment. Well, you first have to be committed to your own being. Now, that what comes to that also comes responsibility. That responsibility is you have to get away from what you want compared to what you need. Now, there is something else that's not really looked upon in this culture that we have adopted from these people who came over here. Where whether it's a Western thinking or Eastern thinking, I'm just saying the way this culture is designed, and that would be that are you compatible? We need to set up some standards of how we find out compatibility because when you start procreating everything that you are and all the people before you and the person you're with, that's a combination that has to be looked at. Is this something that we haven't looked at in a more magnitude way? It's not just the physical attraction. It's just not the made up attractions due to this condition that we've in this culture. But it's also that we have to look at it from the standpoint what kind of offspring and the conditions. Now, the conditions is it's also important because the woman, once the woman has received the child, or even in conception, the vibrations that go into conception. We don't even talk about how that is done. Say that day I have a bad hair day, and then I'm reproducing another child. Those vibrations goes into that cell structure that's coming out of me and into her, and the same thing for her. And not only that, the days thereafter. See, all of this is important in producing the best person that we can make together. So, is this person compatible with me? If is this person walking the way I'm walking, going this direction? Do we have the same ideology or the same way of thinking? Or are we going to cause friction and trauma and more mental scarring among ourselves? These things actually would slow down the hopping and humping thing. You know, when you look at it from a responsible standpoint. When you're young, you're looking at it as conquering, and now the tables have turned because now the females are looking at conquering males now. So we're all screwed up. So the value system is just gone. It's been eradicated. We have to get back to sitting down and saying, hey, look, what is the best thing for us as a group of people going forward, and how we're going to instantiate us as a group of people for the future, or are we just going to play ourselves in this materialistics and dealing only on the once. So this is the things that we have to sit down and we have to actually map out. It's just not just a conversation, is that we have to really get into the tangibles enough to sit down and use a way of studying like a think tank and setting down these I consider certain types of formulas of okay, if you see yourself, is this what you want in your goal in life? And I want this goal in life, and see if we're compatible. College did it sometimes substantiate that, but then that's thrown out of whack because of materialism. So how many young ladies go into college looking for some guy to take care of them? How many young ladies go into college trying to find that one husband and then try to get a hold of that athlete and then get dumped and then they did not tend to themselves? How many women who get infatuated or turned out by something physically that happens with a male, they think that's all that in the bag of chips, not looking at it just looking at the short range of that physical contact, and in the mid range looking at it as, oh well, I can change him into being what I want him to be, and in the long range and then being alone. Because that's the problem that we're having in our community in this culture, thinking that we can change the way a person is instead of knowing what a person is prior to getting involved. So courtship used to be the prize of the day. It was done by your families, see if they were compatible before anything else jumped off. I don't know if that's what we have to go back to because everybody is into this individual. I can make my own decision, and it's kind of hard to make decisions when you don't have the experience to make these decisions or the information across the board how to make a proper decision. So we got a lot of work to do if we're going to talk about us as a group, or we're just going to be individuals as which this culture ferments, and that's just why we're in the trouble we're in today. I hope I answered your question in depth because you asked me like 4 different things. So, but for me, I don't really buy the institution of marriage because of the legal system. It binds you into that, which is unfortunate because you kind of play by the rules and laws and regulations. But when it comes down to it, the commitment must start with oneself and one's goals and see if those things are compatible. When it comes into love, you have to then define what all love is. If is it the hormone love, is it the infatuation love, or is it just a dormant, you know? But at the same time, if you're gonna be with somebody, if you're gonna be with one person, you better make sure that you know what you're getting into. That's why I'm not in favor of a man being with one woman. If he's with multiple women, it not only makes him more mature, it takes a lot of pressure off from her, from to his needs, and always tending to just the kids. It can be worked as a group. That's the reason why I said we got to flush this system out of our thought process, brain process, because all our sisters, believe it or not, are catching hell raising these children by themselves, and then the children are catching hell. And all we're doing is creating a worse type of group of people, and you can see it because they are making more jails instead of making more schools, and then the school system is a incarceration factor. So from that standpoint, the proof is already in the pudding, is written on the wall. Are we going to accept that information and say we're no longer going to go a part of this? Are we going to create our own, or are we just going to just let ourselves perish and be somebody else's meal ticket? So we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do? Are we going to keep thinking of us as an individual, what we want, or are we going to get in the basis of what we need? I hope I didn't take too long or speak too long. So go ahead.
No, you didn't take long at all. You're touching on some valid points. That's why, I asked for you to join, because you are in a committed relationship. You are raising children, and I think the fear of as you say, the legal process of it all chases people away from it. Now, however we want to define marriage, it could be going through the ceremonial part and signing on the dotted line.
Excuse me, I don't want to interrupt you, but I forgot to ask one other question. The other question was how to make this thing work for us in this framework of marriage. It's sacrifice.
Right.
You got to give to get, and you may have to give more than you get. Sacrifice. And that doesn't matter if it's a monogamous or polygamy, it doesn't really matter. You have to sacrifice or pay the price of not sacrificing. That goes works on both sides of the fence, male and female.
Excellent. Because it is a sacrifice. Are we willing to make that sacrifice for someone else's feelings, needs, desires, wants? Can we make that sacrifice? Excellent terminology, because it is a sacrifice. You're giving up a lot when you commit yourself to someone else. Are we
the other portion of it is net worth. We're not even looking at it from an economical standpoint. When you talk about the landlord, how many landlords is profiting off our demise and separation and division? They're making a killing. This is where we don't understand how the numbers work against us, and the fact that you want what you want, but we're all suffering, especially emotionally, and the children are suffering. When we can find accommodation. Remember, most people came over here, and when they immigrate over here, and they're like 15, 20, 30 people into one house, and people seem to have more than what most of us have individually, like in just one household. But who's profiting from our demise? We're not even taking that standpoint, which is why we think living in this culture is so healthy for us when it is not. we can live within this culture, but we need to create our own culture in this culture. And it needs to be better than being able to be looked at as pimps and whores, or looked at as drug dealers or thugs, or somebody who wants to cause harm in the community. We have relinquished our community to people who are doing harm as if we're so scared of them. And the fact of it is, most of them that are doing harm in our community are living with other women and mothers that are allowing this to happen. Like I said to you many times before, if the women don't step in and put their foot on this, then we just might as well pack it up and call it a day, because we are giving them our livelihood and our net worth. And our net worth is our numbers. It's as simple as that. They only bring people in here to replace the work we will no longer do. So what does that leave us? That means now they're going to eat off us by putting us in a position where they're lawyers, judges, doctors, experiments in prisons and so forth on, and prison guards. And we're allowing them to eat off of our being. So slavery it's manifests itself into incarceration, but it started with mental incarceration that started even before slavery. So these standpoints, we have not figured it out that we're getting played, and now it is us playing us. So if you got young men and women who are involved in gang, instead of patrolling the neighborhoods to make it safe and making it dangerous, they're playing in the hands of their children, eating and living in better homes and in better schools. And that's part where we've lost our minds, literally. So when it comes down to this commitment, it has to be where I feel the women are going to have to get together and say, hey, look, we're no longer going to have this happen to our group of people. We're going to make sure that our children always have some type of male influence, even if we have to pull together in certain households or a couple of households, and do that the way that is best conducive to us. And it might be where you might end up having a bunch of men with one woman, depending on the strength of the man or relationship. I don't think that's healthy, because you put too many men in one place, you're gonna have some beating, killing, and something. So we have to use it pragmatically. If we do it the right way, if we figure out how to do it the right way, we can make our strengths and numbers increase. Whether, like I said before, whether you're into the religious aspect of it, read numbers. Numbers is one of the first things they teach you in school. You start at zero, you either go negative or you go to positive. Right now, we're going negative. And that is the numbers is what allows us. So when people talk about black economics or black empowerment and all these things, who are you selling it to? Because everybody in our community is buying from other people. So, and those who are locked up are feeding other people. So this is where we're not picking up the real deal. And we're failing that. And then when you have our so-called leaders or speakers speak upon that, they always talk about things are not totally relative to a comparable total package on how to get this thing right, because all they want to stand up and be aggrandized, want to be heard. They feel like that, they'll live one way and talk another way, and then what you have corruption. So the thing of it is, who do they really work for? I constantly say that. Who do these so-called leaders really work for when they stand up in front of you, look better than their constituents? But they'll say Jesus will come out of their mouth. You know what I mean? That this is totally contradictory, unless they just feel the mass they're talking to is too stupid and they don't know any better. You see where I'm getting at? So all this stuff, we're dealing with a lot of facades that have led up to the demise of our people, and it has led into from the basis that our women have to stop their want and their individuals, and they've got to say the buck stops with us. I put the weight on the sisters, and I hope that's not me sounding so mannish or malish, but I'm just saying that somehow, some way, you have the babies. You know that the sons that you're raising by yourself is too much pressure on you. Somehow, some way, you got to take that pressure off. You have to figure it out, because the males are going to be males. And then to raise that male, he's got to be around in an atmosphere that shows him how to be a better male. Even when I was separated with my first wife, wherever they moved, my name went on the home. I brought the groceries and I took care of the bills regardless, and I was taking care of 2 or 3 homes at one time. So that's what I meant by sacrifice. Did I get the benefits from it? At times, yes, but we had a strong understanding about what would be and would not be. But it was really bad and rough for me. It took its toll on me. It took toll on my health. But if I'd have had all the women in the same household, my life would have been simpler. But because the fact that ladies haven't figured out how to get along is taking its toll on me, and I almost died in the process of it. So now I'm kind of cool out ski, and I'm just looking at it. It's like I can tell you my story, and you can look at it. You guys can learn from it. But I pretty much have paid my dues in this culture, and I know it's unhealthy, and that's the only expression I can really give. And like I said, I don't want to get long-winded because I know other people want to speak. So, thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. You dropped some jewels, and I know the listening audience may agree or disagree with a lot of what you said. I want to bring this to Brother Adonis because I want to keep it on the males a little bit. You know, Brother IMU spoke on it's the women who have to lead and have to show the way. But many brothers find that sacrilegious in some way. That we already want control. We want to be men. Feminism is wrong. Can we? I mean, if brothers want to talk about the polygamous lifestyle and men carry more sperm than women carry more eggs and so on and so forth, children need to eat. And I'm gonna bring this before I go to you, brother. I spent a lot of time in Southern Africa, and I chose South Africa as my first place to go to the motherland because South Africa, I believe, suffered the same indignation as we here in America has. They understand our plight because they're still suffering under it, even with the black president. Even with Mandela, they're still suffering under it because the majority African do not have the economic opportunities as the white Boers. So I chose South Africa to go to first because I wanted to see for myself what was South Africa like after apartheid. And I wanted to talk to the brothers and sisters there. And I went there 5 times. I loved it. Is there dysfunction there? Yes. Just like there's dysfunction here. It's only 21, 22 years after apartheid. South Africa today. So I talked to them about the polygamous lifestyle. I talked to people, not just only in South Africa, that was from Zimbabwe and other places, who culturally have this lifestyle. A lot of them reject it because as women, we are inherently jealous. Now, the reason why polygamy happened and was so prevalent there, and you have to think about this in a very smart way. A man in a family, and they say, well, he's selling off his daughter, which is really not the case. Even though the male who wants to marry, and it's usually the parents who set this marriage up. You don't really have too much of a choice way back then. You don't have too much of a choice. The parents are the ones who choose the family, choose the bride. And it is the male's family that must provide cows or whatever is negotiated for this man and this woman to marry. Now, does he just have one wife forever? No. Why? Because the land has to be cultivated. And you cannot expect one woman to produce a litter. I'll put it to you that way. So he takes on another wife. Not only does it provides help to cultivate the land, but it shows that the family is prosperous. Right? Now, we today in America live in this polygamous way, but in the wrong way. Because too many children do not know who their father is. He is absent 100%. If he's giving support financially, I hear brothers crying about that. And I hear brothers crying on how the support is spent. Oh, she's got to get that nail, that hair, that this, that. It's a complaint. It's like the time spent with the child is irrelevant. I'm giving you support. The courts have ordered me to give you support. What more do you want from me? Which brings friction. We talked the other night about sisters who meet a brother. She's interested. He's interested. He has children outside of your relationship prior to meeting you. And you become indignant because he now wants to spend time with his children because of the fear he's going to get with the woman. Oh, you're going over there with that, you know. We have to reevaluate how we're dealing with each other. We have to reevaluate what it means to be committed. Because I certainly wouldn't want a guy who has children and he spends zero time with his children. That shows a lack of so many things. You fill in the blanks. You know, if he doesn't have the care enough to care about his children, he's going to repeat that same deal with me. So, Brother Adonis, I want to ask you, when you were married, how much commitment do you think you put into the relationship, and how much commitment you think your wife was putting into the relationship? And if hindsight is 2020, were there signs prior to your marriage, or did it just come out of the blue, a different person? Because we need to touch on that as well, how we kind of lie to get into relationships because we like a person, but that's not really who we are at the end of the day. So if you could elaborate on that, if you don't mind, as much as you would like.
Sure. Let's see. I can say that I gave it my all. I know that. I'm certain of that. I enjoyed being a husband. Um, but because going into marriage, we sat down and I told her that, let's not do it the normal American way. Let's make marriage the way we want it to be. I stuck to that. And so, um, my personality type is I don't allow anybody to walk over me, like, period. Whether that's somebody that's supposed to be looked at as my superior because I work for them, or whether they feel like they're a god because they carried a child for 9 months. I don't allow it, period. And so when it happens, um, if I'm amongst somebody that likewise, either they don't see the error in their ways when they're causing that kind of friction or whatnot, then it becomes explosive, and that's kind of how it was for our relationship. And there were signs early on before I made that commitment, but I made the commitment honestly. Now that I'm fully honest with myself and I've healed from that whole entire situation, I made it because prior to that, I had only been in my son's life maybe a collective of like 5 months uninterrupted, and I had went through a few tragic things. One I'll share. For instance, I don't know what it's like to see my firstborn son come into this world. His grandfather got to hold him first. Um, I was escorted out of the hospital the same day. I finally got to see him hours later, and I got to see him through a text message. So my marrying her was attacked. Um, that I knew that once I distanced myself, because I knew that I wasn't the crazy one. I knew that at one point I did truly love her, but I wanted to get us help, and so I put us in counseling and things like that, like really expensive counseling. It was like close to 300 per hour, and um, but at every level, like when it got to the serious point, as far as really getting help, that's when she would show another side of herself. But that only came out once we were married. It wasn't really full blown until we were married. Uh, I think she at one point gave it her all too, but she was raised by a very domineering mother who emasculated her father. And this is a conversation we had very early on. So it's one of the reasons why, even though that was a red flag for me, even though I came from an environment where that was very common, and or for like people not to even have their dad in their lives and things like that, or their mom in their lives. And she came from a very privileged background where she had both her parents, and then she was in private school her whole life. Um, that was still a red flag for me because it signaled daddy problems and whatnot. And so, but the fact that she was able to self-identify, I found it as intelligent and self-aware. And I knew I looked at that as something that I identified with, because that's how I was able to climb out of my situation, and achieve the things that I did. So even though that was a red flag for me, I kind of overlooked that. And those are the little things that I refer to when I say, there's certain things that we know in our gut, where even though we might have an infatuation or some sort of form of love for a person, it probably shouldn't go any further. Because I had options for it not to get to the point to where I bless this woman with my son. Because I truly believe the son that I have right now would still be how he is if I would have had that with another woman. I really believe that. And so, for me, mine was very weird because there were times where we really got along. Like we went on trips. We went on a lot of different cool vacations, took her to the Grand Canyon. Like there's different real cool things we did as a family and stuff like that. And when people would see us, they would get really inspired because like that's a cool young black family. But once again, she came from a background with a very domineering mom who emasculated her father. And once we got married, she wanted me to conform to that. And I almost believe it's the reason why she chose me, because oddly, I look just like her father, except I'm 5'11", he's about 6'5", but we have like almost the same exact talents, except, you know, for instance, I had a videography company where we've done like McDonald's commercials and Nike, and pitched to like Vimeo, and put this one artist on 106 in Park. He would do things like that. For instance, he was the brains behind ESPN's uh, um, fantasy football league or whatnot. Uh, and but his wife, like once she ended up getting the to the point to where she saw that he was doing big things, she kind of put it into that. So that those are kind of things that were prevalent in our relationship. Where if I start doing things where it meant meeting new people or being social or having to network with people that she might think aren't cool or whatnot, it was a problem. So yeah, at the end of the day, um, I think my situation is a perfect example of just taking your time before you get to the point to where you're sitting you're going to that level with the person sexually, because you might not you're taking chances at that point. And I just see that happen so many times where I'm dealing with so many young people younger than I that are about to go through the same kind of pain, and they're not really ready for it, emotionally, financially, mentally. And that's why we're in a lot of the situations we're in now. And I can only stress um, at the end of the day, um, we have to be more patient with one another, and we have to take our time with ourselves, and go inward before we're even ready to step into the so-called relationship, and try to share ourselves with someone else.
You're 100% right. And one of the reasons why I brought up the ancestral history of polygamy, because we don't really want our parents to choose our mate. We want to be free enough to meet someone like-minded, fall in love, and have that quote unquote happily ever after, whatever that means for that couple. We don't want to be forced into a marriage. But at times it seems to me that's what needs to happen. That fathers and mothers need to come together and choose mates for their sons and daughters. Because if we're left to do this on our own, there's going to be a whole lot of pain when it comes down to the children, because that's who really suffers when we can't seem to come together and get along. You create a life, and a lot of brothers say, well, she decided to bring this child into the world. That's her decision. And yes, it is our decision, because a lot of us really don't believe in abortion, so we choose to bring life into this world. That is our duty, I believe, because I know there was a time for me at a certain age, I wanted children. What is the purpose? if I can't recreate. But I don't want to go through the drama of child support. I don't want to go through the pain and torture of watching my child not know the other half of them. Because there is a other half of them. And it's tragic when we can't seem to get along and allow a court system to decide the rearing of this child. It's tragic that we allow this to happen. So we must be mindful on the onset. I want to bring this back to the sisters and ask the question, what is our responsibility to the brothers when we are with child in the early stages? We just find out you're not married to this brother. You have decisions you need to make. You make those decisions based on whatever. Could be religion. It could just be whatever it is. It's your decision. You bring this child into the world knowing that this man is not ready, willing, or able to support this child. What is it our duty before we get into that predicament to ourselves and to that child to consider when we are dealing with relationships? Anyone want to chime in on that? Angelica, Sabrina?
Yeah, you know, I had something to say on that one. I think we do, as women, we do have a responsibility. And that responsibility essentially our standard. And that standard, and we talked about this a bit the other night, starts with our parents and the qualities that they instilled in us. Now, some people are fortunate enough to break away from not having those good foundations set in early enough with their parents or parent, and kind of recreate and redefine those according to the way that they see things and their perceptions in life. But it starts with us. And what I mean is that, and I'll use myself for an example. I'm going to keep it all the way 100 with y'all for a second. I was dealing with a guy that was convenient. We weren't dating. He was essentially a booty call. And during that time, you know, he had given me red flags. Like Adonis said, he gave me red flags. He would say things like, you know, me and you need to stop playing this cat and mouse game. We just need to, you know, try this out. You know, I get sick and tired of, you know, coming middle of the night. And I wasn't trying to hear that. I'm like, listen, this is what it is right now. And if you're not feeling this, then, you know, you have the permission to leave. Nobody's stopping you. And after some time, there was an event with us one night, and the realization hit after a conversation that he was poking holes in the condoms. And a lot of guys will say, wait a minute, that's what women do. No, this is what he did. I guess, you know, that story circulated around enough that he got the idea. And what I didn't know at that time is that I was already pregnant. And I knew he wasn't about nothing. He couldn't give me nothing. And I contemplated having an abortion. But it was the elders in my family that kind of coerced me into keeping, which is now my son. And I had to, once I made that decision that, you know what, I'm just gonna follow what they say, you know, if you make a bed and lay in it, then, you know, you got to deal with what comes out the next morning. And I made the decision that I was going to raise this child that I was carrying. And then my next immediate notion was, I know that I can't rely on him for anything. He wasn't working. Like when I tell you he was convenient, he was convenient. If I called him any time of the day, I could, even if he didn't have a phone, I could page somebody that knew where he was to call me back at any given time of the day. And I knew that I was going to be saddled with the responsibility of raising this child 100% on my own. And there was also a part of me that wanted him to step up and do the right thing. But I knew 9 times out of 10, because of his situation and because of his character and because of the means in which I had even conceived my son. And that's a whole other, if I can segue for a second, that was a whole other ball of emotions for me, because I felt as if he had stolen something from me. When you, with your sneaky ways, kind of force a pregnancy, sort of, if I can say that, I don't know the appropriate words to use for that. But when you manipulate a thing in such a way where it results in a pregnancy, which you're the only one who wants it, and me as the woman carrying this child, I have no idea that this is going on initially. I felt like something was stolen from me. I felt like he had ripped my life. So, let alone did I have to deal with the notion of raising this child on my own, but I had to deal and really settle into or get myself out of that anger that I was even in this situation in the first place. And there are a lot of women that I've talked to, and again, I'm segueing for a second, dealt with men that get pregnant, you know, unplanned, and they're like, you know, well, we need to talk about what we want to do. And they have that conversation, and then, you know, she wants an abortion. And then it's the brother that says, I don't believe in abortions. Or it's the brother that shuck and jives, you know, when she's asking for half of the cost, whatever the fee is. And he says, meet me here or I'm gonna come, and he never comes through. And the emotions that you feel, because you understand that, let alone do you have to do this on your own, but you have to do this with a man, supposedly, hypothetically, with a man who's put you through this when you didn't want it, is a set of emotions that I guess would be similar to the brothers. But as a woman, I guess singularly in our gender is a whole completely new set of experiences. But to get back to my point, it's our responsibility. And that responsibility starts with what we allow and what we tolerate. A lot of us far too often do things because, or we continue with these guys, whatever shape or fashion that relationship is, because it feels good, physically and emotionally, and really nothing else. We don't take the time to have the conversations. And this is the wonderful thing about, you know, for me, about being a sapiosexual, is that I can be initially attracted to you physically, but that doesn't mean I want to have sex with you. All that means is that, you know, you're pleasing to the eyes. But what I want to know is what's between those two ears, and to see if there's something viable, and to see if what ticks in your mind and the way that you see the world is enough to get me to that position where I want to explore things with you in a physical way. And that's a really, because that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of, you know, currency, that, you know, invested emotional and mental currency to put that kind of stock into one person. And when dealing with relationships and with pregnancies, we have to be, like you said, mindful of what it is that we allow and what we don't allow. And if we are in a situation that we are pregnant, and we do decide, for whatever those reasons are, that we're going to keep the baby, then the reality, however harsh whoever's listening might want to disagree, the reality is you have to get comfortable with the notion that you very well may be dealing with this alone. Because nothing up until that point has given you any reason to look at him and view him as a support system. And until we start taking the time out to figure out what it is that we want and the quality of men that we want, we have to start putting those standards in ourselves. So that way, because my biggest teacher was my experience. And there's a brother that I'm friends with on Facebook, Giorgio Reed. And he put a post up a while ago, a few months back, and it said, knowledge is pain and pleasure is its reward. And what I took from that is that through our experiences, we go through a lot, and some of that is painful. But what it does is that it teaches us, if it does teach us anything, what we don't want ever again. And if we choose to take that lesson in and actually learn from it, we're able to make better decisions later on in life. But when we see that lesson and it's so painful and it's so traumatic for us that we kind of shield ourselves, and we start to turn into this hermit. And then we keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. We have, you know, we become in love with pain, or the whole process of pain. And so for women, yeah, we have to be responsible for ourselves first. If we're pregnant and we're just meeting this brother and we're not too sure, for one, there has to be a conversation. Regardless of what we want to think and what goes on in our mind, conversation with the man. Because we don't know, he may not want the baby. He may be very aware of his situation and very aware that he can't afford it. He don't have the time for it. He has A and B and C going on, or he has too many other kids, and he just can't give that child the kind of quality of life that child deserves. And that's very true. But we have to be open to say, you know what, I get it. If a brother tells us something, if he gives us a response like that, we can't just go all gung-ho, forget you, I don't believe in abortions, and I'm going to have this baby anyway. And then we go ahead and continue on with the pregnancy and then expect him to be there. We can't. Regardless of what our heart says to us, and regardless that, oh, well, he should, it still is his child, it still is his seed, his DNA that's running through this baby's blood. He told you from the inception of the conversation, from the very beginning, that he could not. And that's the reality. And we have to disassociate ourselves with our emotions sometimes when we're dealing with it. You know, everybody has their perspectives about abortion. You know, they could be pro-life or pro-choice, whatever it is. But the reality of the situation is that you have to think with logic, and you have to also consider the child's quality of life. If you know a brother and he expresses to you that he's not capable of doing so, just because your heart feels like it's the right thing to do to keep the child, because you shouldn't kill a life, and then you give birth to this child, and then all these traumatic things happen, in series of unfortunate events happens where you're calling him and asking him for this, and you need that, or you don't have enough of this. And he's telling you, no, I don't got it. And then you're hurt because he won't and he can't. You did that to yourself. And that's the reality. So for me, my answer is we have our own responsibility and we have to start raising our own standards. And that, to me, is how I see it.
You touched on something very profound, which really is what, you know, IMU was speaking on. It is the woman who is the leader. Brothers may not want to hear that. They may think, oh, here we go, these lesbians. No, we are the leaders. Because if we can control our passions, then there will be less and less of unwanted pregnancies and fatherless children. Now we have to be honest here, because this is the 100 zone. Brothers, because of their hormones, and some sisters, you know, they go there too, be pushing up on you, as they say, and telling you anything they think you want to hear for that 20 minutes. I gotta laugh at that. That 20-minute moment of passion. You see, they'll tell you anything. They'll sing you a song for that. And we fall for that. And where the righteousness comes in, because let's just be 100 again, because this is the 100 zone. If we are the women who are raising these men and they grow up to be the hound dogs, horn dogs, whatever you want to call it, and not really understand that sexuality is a human nature, yes. But we must be disciplined when we're dealing with our sexuality. And of course, no, we are not animals who do it at a season. We do it mostly for pleasure. You see, there are some creatures that reproduce and the male runs away and the woman is fine with it because that is just the way nature intended. And then you have some that are in pods where they reproduce and the males are right there. I think it's the black widow spider that reproduces and she kills the male. Okay? But we mostly do it for pleasure. And we must get off the fun train, which is what we are mostly on, which causes way too many problems.
Sis, let me chime in real quick. I just kind of wanted to reiterate something that we talked about the other night. And that's dealing with understanding sexuality. And I think at first there's an image that I like when I first came into what I like to call the Black conscious community, that I used to see a lot. And it was an image of Malcolm X board, and he was in a classroom with, you know, a group of young boys on the chalkboards at husbandry, and it listed out the reinterpretations of the word husband and the things that he's supposed to do. And to me, when I seen that image, I was like, geez, like he's really instilling these young men with some strong stuff. And the reason why I felt that way is because we're raising these kids with no understanding of gender. For one, of themselves, their purpose, their strengths and their weaknesses, and then the opposite gender and their purpose and their strengths and their weaknesses, and how we should view that opposite sex as a sacred thing, because we understand what they can do and what they can't do, and what collectively, if you get with the right one, what you two can do together, right? Because first, you kind of go into this thing where you have to give one the understanding and the self-respect. You have to start giving them the information that builds self-value. And then you show them the opposite sex, and you show them all the things that they should know and why they have value, and how valuable you two can be together collectively when you work towards something. Mm-hmm. So to get back to it, it's like we don't teach our children anything, right, in regards to value of the opposite gender. Because if we did, our kids, even when they would make mistakes, they would go back to this thing that they were taught and say, maybe I need to look at this in the perspective that I was taught before. Because what kids are learning and what we're not teaching our kids is about sex. Right. They get it from the schools, they get the sex ed, and sex ed traumatizes them into not having sex, but at the same time raises the curiosities of how wonderful it could be if you did it the right way, or did it with protection. And then they get into middle school and high school, and they got other kids that their parents don't really care enough to monitor them. And then they're watching these porn sites, which is like fantasy. It's like fantasy football. It's not even real, And then so that's the idea that they have of sex. And then so when they go out and try this thing, because their bodies are going through all these new sensations and emotions and growing and getting hair and all this other stuff, they go according to the example that's been presented to them, and that's been porn, and that's been sex ed through school, and that's not been us. So they make poor decisions based upon the fact that they don't know any better. And when a mind doesn't know a thing it's never been taught, you can't expect for it to value the opposite sex and treat sex in itself as a thing where there's great wonders to be explored. And that's why we're so rushed when we do it. Osho has this wonderful video, and whoever is watching, I suggest after you get done with this to go to, click back on YouTube and search Osho, and the title is, I think, Making Love a Sacred Experience. And I showed this a couple of times. I posted it on a few of my social platforms to see if anybody would watch it. And what he does is he paints this very vivid picture of how sex should be slowed down, and how you should really dive and invest into the other person, into not just their body, but into their mind and their spirit. And that even the space that you engage in sex or making love should be its whole alternative space outside of the bedroom. That room should be purposely created just for making love and to interact in a physical way with that person. And imagine if we taught our children this. Imagine how they would view it. And imagine how our young men would view it. Instead of them out here running around and sleeping with this one and spending a half an hour or however long it takes to get off with her, and then on to the next one. Imagine how much more respect we both as men and women would have for each other if we thought of it or knew it in those terms. So we have to totally reinvent the wheel when it comes to genders and sex in itself. Because right now what we're doing is we're raising children to be the polar opposite of what we expect them or trying to raise them to be. And then, like I said to you, then we get upset when they demonstrate the lack of parenting that we've done. And to me, that's just facts.
That is facts. absolute facts. Well said. We must invest in our children a lot more than we have been investing. So these repeated dysfunctions do not occur. Definitely well said. We talked a lot after our live stream, and anyone that may listen to the previous one on relationships that we had, it was just a touch and go. And in this one, I hope that we can really dive into where we're going wrong and how we can fix. Because this platform isn't just about the dysfunction. We know the dysfunction. We see it. We're living it. But how we can listen to this live stream and then turn around and fix ourselves so we do not pass on these dysfunctions to our offspring any longer. Because as IMU have stated, we must reprogram our minds, reprogram what we're doing. Because there is a system out here to keep us in this dysfunctional way. And if we want freedom, if we want solutions, if we want healing, we have to face and deal with some hard solutions and make some hard decisions and deal with the hard discipline it will take for us to remove ourselves from what's happening. Or we are going to be extinct from the planet. And that's just the reality of it. Because the direction that we're going and how we can't get along and get along is going to be our demise. I'll say this again. No woman or man should go through life feeling unloved, unwanted, cast aside because we are superficial in our ways and desires. It's all superficial. We have to be righteous in how we deal with each other. And don't take that word righteous as religious. No. Righteous in how we deal with each other and the direction we want to see our generations. It's not so much about you and I. It's about the generations to come and that are here. So we have to open those wounds so we can heal and we can come as a collective and do something different. So our future generations do not suffer the consequences of our inadequate behavior and inadequacy of wanting to deal with this, because we don't want to deal with this. We want to place blame on each other when we're both we're both culpable to this problem. It's not one or the other, it's both. It's both. And we must recognize that and deal with it. Whether we want to or not, we must deal with it. Is there anyone else who have any comments? Because Brother Adonis, he must have jumped out because he was outside of the home. Is there any other topics or statements anyone would like to speak about? Sister Sabrina, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. You guys covered, you've covered, a lot. I was hearing everything that you were saying. I was listening to you and Angelica. And I think what you guys said was interesting. I never been in a relationship. I said that before. So I'm just learning and stuff, and I'm just listening as I go. So you guys are right though, like about the male and female relationships. Like there's a lot of wounds that needs to be healed, and we need to work on it, and we need to figure out, what's causing this and what's causing that, and like before it's too late.
I know you stated before your age was 21.
Yeah, 21.
And your dating experiences are limited. And we want for the younger generation to hear this so they don't continue to make these same mistakes, repetitive mistakes. Because, sex is a pleasurable thing. It's pleasurable. It feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't just all go with what feels good. There is responsibility that comes with that. Not just from the outcome of maybe an offspring will happen, but also the person you're dealing with feeling. We must go in strong, understanding ourselves, understanding what we individually want, and expressing that, and allowing that other person to decide whether they want to be a part of it. We can't be liars, deceivers, cheaters. We can't continue to go in on relationships in that direction. We have to be righteous in how we deal with each other. Period. So I hope anyone in your age generation could hear this and really reconsider, because there's so many forces out there, music, television, they make it seem like it's cool to be free spirit. But that free spirit has consequences. And with those consequences comes hatred if it's not performed in the proper manner. And then you have women who, as in my opening monologue, is, do you see a future or your past? Because a lot of times we bring our past experiences to the new relationship, which is a whole other situation. You can't let go of what happened to you in the past. You may be missing out on something good. And because you have those walls and you have those boundaries, you can't even approach the boundary. You can't get near it. You have to walk on eggshells with people. And that causes a relationship to go south before it even began. We should touch on that. How our past experiences reflect on what we bring to the new relationship or the new person that's interested in us, and how we close doors. We don't even open the door. That's why so many sisters find themselves without companionship. Our refusal to be open to different concepts of relationships and honesty, which is the polygamous part. And when I say polygamous, I'm not saying everybody should live that. I'm just saying, if a brother says, this is who I am, I'm not ready to settle with one person, and you, because your infatuation, say, oh, that's cool, that's all right. But in you, it's not all right because of your past hurt pain. You've defeated the relationship before it began. Because you're lying to yourself and to them. There's more of us than them. I don't know if that's design. I don't know the reason for it. But it ain't one for one. And we really got to deal with that. We have to deal with that. And how are we going to deal with that? Are we going to fall into the Western mind of what relationships should be? Or are we going to really open our minds and have to really look at, if there's 10 women to one man, and I'm just throwing that number out there, because it's close to that. That means 9 women are going to be without. We got to deal with that. That's the real. So, is there anything else? Anybody want to add to this? I don't know how long it's been going on.
We just need to build a strong foundation. We need to have the kind of, I guess, I don't know how to put it, like, we can have the relationship that our Sar, Aset, and Aset have, and Kemet, aka Egypt. We can like have that kind of relationship, and you know, we can like learn from, you know, what what strong relationships they had, you know, millions of years ago. We can learn from that, you know, and reapply it in this society. But I don't know, it's like, you know, with all of these issues that you guys are talking about, it seems like it's very difficult to have a relationship in a Western society. I don't know. I don't think South America has these issues. I don't think the Caribbean has these issues. And I don't think Africa has these issues. And I don't know about Canada. But in America, it seems like relationships are just like, I don't know, they're like, they're messed up, they're screwed up. And I guess it's difficult to have a long lasting relationship in a Western society. I don't know.
Well, as people who, and I know I am, you may have a little different ideal as to what indigenous and where we're from and these terminologies, but just for the listening audience to understand, if we're adopting Western philosophy and idealistic, we're going to lose, and
Yeah.
we're losing. And all I'm saying with that is their birth rate is lower than ours. And that's why Planned Parenthood is being pushed upon us in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because they want our birth rate to be comparable to theirs.
Yeah.
And if our birth rate stays the course, then we're going to have to look at sharing a man. And I know people are going to flip out hearing this. They're gonna say, I disagree, I can't share a man. No. But if we are 10-1, 9, and let's just look at the statistics of that. 9 will be without companionship. And we will be miserable, and we will be in a hate mode, which many of us are, because we're trying to keep up with Western ideology. And that's where we're falling short. Period, point blank. And we have to reconsider how we're dealing with each other. And honesty and upfrontness is paramount on the onset. And we have to, as women, start thinking. I could play a song right now from a brother that is dear to my heart. And he said in his music, women are the greatest thinkers. Men may not want to hear that. They may call that feminist. But in all honesty, it is the woman who will change the direction of our future. Because there are more of us than there are men. And we can't be selfish, and we can't be self-centered as we are, because we are not European women. So I'll leave it at that. Anybody else want to touch on that. I am you. Welcome back. If nobody else wants to touch on it, I
Well,
mean, go ahead, brother.
I will say this. Let's do some numbers. All right? Let's do some right quick. Women used to get married at age 12.
Waterman, I'm gonna need you to speak up. You're kind of low over here.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me better now?
That's perfect.
Okay. Let's do some numbers. If and once upon a time, when a child or a young lady was betrothed to a man at certain ages from 12 to 16, they didn't have a choice. Today they have a choice. So let's look at those choices. So you graduate from high school between 17 and 19. You do 6 to 8 years of school. So let's use the latter. 19 and 6 is 25. So by 25, 27, you're out of school. By the time you actually start to figure out things in life and you experience some things in life, you're around 30. And then you have to look at your childbearing years. Your childbearing years can go almost up to 45 or 50, but who wants to have children at 45 and 50 as a female? That doesn't make good sense. So between the ages of 30 and 40 is when the time that you really want to have children after you have maybe gotten a backup plan for a career or some type of career or just something to have in your back pocket. Okay, those are just basic numbers. So now you're going to have 2 or 3 children. You figure that's over maybe a 9 year period, maybe 10. At age, what we say, 30, that's 40. Then you start to say you're going to raise that child to you're about 50, 55, which is a lot to ask for a lady to raise children at that age because of all the things she goes through physically, hormonal changes, so forth and so on, and then her attitude toward everything else. So this is just basic numbers we're dealing with. And and at that time, if she has a husband with her or a man with her, she's going to take the blunt of raising that child, even if she does have a man there, of rearing that child if he is working. If he's not working or they're working both time and they're splitting it, the weight changes far as the I would have to say the wear and tear on the woman. But she's demanded. She's demanded by the child. She's demanded by the husband. She's demanded by her own wants and needs. That's a lot of wear and tear. You look at it as a way a tire has to be replaced. Okay? But if you have more than one wife in a household, the burden of all that stuff is then divided among the women where they actually can spend more time to themselves for themselves as it's a rotation period. And all aspects of children, the male, so forth. If you look at that, that's actually a way of longevity for the sacrifice of not just what you want and saying you own a man. If you get that mindset in your head and use these numbers, you'll find you have more time to spend with your girlfriends, more time to spend to yourself, and your life expectancy actually will increase. Then our village gets stronger. What makes our village stronger that way is because now this woman is not dealing with more than one man to deal with, which would change all of her personas and how she has to deal with. So these are the factors that I look at when I make my procrastination on this aspect of how we have to build a new family structure. And one man with several women, it's the way nature designed it, just from based on the sperm, like I've been saying, and her amount of eggs. And not only that, how our world has changed with that. Women do want more time themselves. They want certain things. So you give up a little bit of everything you want is the ownership of the male for a little bit more time for yourself and the raising of children in one home. You know, there was a show called Big Love where he had many different homes and different wives in each home, but the jealousy still reigned. That was a very good show to look at how polygamy works when a woman has her own home. But it doesn't take away the fact that there was still jealousy that created havoc, as he had this one business that was supporting all of them. Now, today we know most of our brothers can't afford anything like that, and every time I bring up polygamy, the first thing most of the women say, well, if he can afford it. Wait a minute, I thought we were in this together. Now look at the income side of it. women are now actually more predominant in getting the job. So if that male is actually has some type of livelihood or some type of living, there's some that can actually still be getting their schooling while the other ones are taking care of the children while the other ones are out working. This is the better formula for this thing's actually set up better for us, but we're working against it because we've gotten caught up in somebody else's wanting to be like you know who. Her, who didn't want you living next door to her. Or didn't want you shopping in the places she shopped. And just like Oprah found out. You get where I'm coming from? So the writing's on the wall. It's just a matter if we pay attention to it and we grow up to understand the circumstances we're in and know that this thing has always been designed to keep our numbers down. This is the reality. I don't know if you guys heard Omar Johnson speak today, Dr. Omar Johnson. He spoke about a lot of things and then he got off the cusp. This is the prime objective right now that we need to be talking about is how to make our inner family stronger. It will conclude that you don't need their schooling because there's mothers at home who have educated, who will teach the kids at home, and homeschooling is already available for us, and they will learn better in the community. Social aspect will be better because they'll be playing in the neighborhood, the mamas and stuff will be watching, and then those men who are not working at the time or in different shifts can be out there monitoring that. See, we can solve our problem in our community if we get up off this I want crap and I'm so important and I'm jealous. We can get rid of that stuff. We could be better for ourselves. And I can guarantee you this will work if we all come together and put our heads to it. But as long as we want what they want us to want, and that's benefits one group and it takes away from us. To me, it's just that simple. I don't look at it as rocket science and complex.
That's definite and 100. You can't, if we talk about science and we talk about mathematics, we can't run away from that. The science and the mathematics of it all, as far as longevity, as a mother to one child. And I wanted more than one child. My goal in life wasn't to be the workaholic that I have become. I wanted to have a family. And if I could have a sister wife, hear me, sister wife, to help raise my son, where he's never alone, it would be a blessing. Now, in my previous stream, I said my marriage broke up because of infidelity. And that was because maturity and understanding wasn't there for me because I was not taught that growing up. I was in a home where my mother and my father were together until the day my father passed on. And my mother never remarried. She raised the three of us and never remarried, didn't even date. And as a woman at my age who is divorced because of my misunderstandings of relationships, and because as my mother did not really have these heavy conversations with me, so it was a misunderstanding of relationships. I thought life was you marry and this man is committed to only me for life. And in reality, that's difficult for some men, not all, for some men. And it's not until after now we have a good relationship. We raise our son together. But I don't date because I have no time to date, to find a partner.
Now that's that sacrifice. Is communication a bad translation?
Exactly.
Look at the sacrifice. And because you were not in that environment where you could have said, okay, dude, I know that's what you're doing. Let's invite it. Let's work it in for the best of our children and take me some more time myself. Now you're paying the other half of it in. You got to work for both of y'all, and then you're missing out on time with him, and you're wearing yourself out. So you're cutting years off your life. That's the numbers. This is
Exactly.
simple stuff. All we got to do is talk about each experience we had. Just like for me, I wanted a lot of children. My first wife, she did not. She told me she did. She lied. But if there'd been a process into that, like a lie detector test, then I would have known ahead of time, and I wouldn't have had involved myself into something that is been turmoil for other aspects of my life with my relationship with my other children. You understand what I mean? So this could have been avoided because we now have the mechanisms now to avoid it. It's a part of us to put it into place. Are we going to do it or not? Or are we going to just keep complaining? Are we going to put the process down and say, look, we don't know if this is going to work, but let's start here. Let's find trial and error till we find something that's finite. Or because we're not going to find spandex because it's no way to one size fits all. That, throw that out the window. But at least we could cut down on the turmoil and the tragedy.
Exactly. So, hopefully people, the family, that's what I like to call the people who are listening, family, could hear this and have a better understanding on going forward with their relationships and being 100, because we don't have that lie detector machine in our back pockets and put people to the test. We have to be 100.
That sounds like an occupation to me.
Well,
that's putting people to work. That's that economic side of it that I'll be talking about. Okay.
That's really another topic.
But it actually works. It works in the fact because our relationships are harmed because of the fact that the way money flows away from us instead of toward us. So that hurts our relationships as well.
Exactly.
Remember, you're working 13, 14-hour days. That's too much. That's too much for any man, let alone for a woman who's trying to raise a child. Primarily, 60-70% of her energy days, and that's not healthy for him. Growing up with you worried at work and coming back and forth from work, that's just too much. It's just not right.
Yeah, we've had many conversations in the back chat that I said I'm ready to just like implode because not only am I putting in a lot of hours at work, but I'm also trying to homeschool and trying to do a lot of different things with my son, and it's difficult. And I am a human being at the end of the day who don't have someone to share good or bad times with me. I travel a lot because that is my passion. And I would love to have a partner to do that with. Because, we all have to know who we are. And sometimes it takes years to know who we are as individuals. Sabrina, she's 21 years old, and at 21 for me, I had no clue as to who I was or what I wanted. So what we ask of that generation is much. We're asking them to grow up much faster and be more disciplined. And that's a challenge because you have to start much younger to know who and what you want by the time you're 21. And that's a difficult thing. It wasn't until I was 40 that I actually said, oh, wait, hold up. This is what I want to do. And I started to do it. But yes, there was a cost in between a lot of hurt and pain, a lot of growth, and now at my age, and I don't mind saying it, 49, be 50 in September, Virgo's in the building, that I do want a relationship that is meaningful. And because of past experiences, I do understand that it may entail me giving up some of what my beliefs had been. It may entail that because I experienced it. And most people can't handle it, maybe in a younger age, but as they get older, they may, who knows. But my experiences said, yeah, I could use a sister to come in and help me with my son. I could use that because my son I have to provide. Not that the father doesn't provide, yes he does. But I have to provide because that is my thing. I would love to stay home and be mother. But for that to happen, and sisters have to understand this too, for that to happen, you have got to allow that man to go out and to provide. And if you want to monopolize, which many of us want, we want it all. And we can't have it all. Not in this atmosphere. Rents are high, food is high. Many people are living in apartments. They don't own homes where they can cultivate in their backyards. So there's a lot of things working against us. And that means we must change our thinking. And there's nothing wrong with changing your thinking. This has nothing to do with religion. This has to do with survival of a people. A generation of people for millennia. That's what we have to really think about. I think about that for my son. What will I leave him? What would I leave him? So I see Sister Angelica had to pop out. Brother Adonis popped out. I think I'm going to close this out because I don't want to run too long.
Okay.
Any closing remarks?
No, I enjoyed the conversation.
I'm glad you did, sister, and I'm happy for your participation here. You're a beautiful young sister, and I hope that you learn much from our talks because it's about open that wound so we can heal and move on. So when you have your children, you will be better prepared than I was when I had my son.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks, IMU? I appreciate your participation in this live stream.
I'm real good. I just want to say thank you for having me on, and I like to say that you know how I pretty much feel about how the group thing is, and now most other people know, and they also know that we have to be very careful of falling into trap doors because they've already started to head us off on this aspect of correcting a problem we have with numbers and trying to pull off what I'm saying that we need to do by creating this way of pairing up with women and men with men, and that's another point of us falling through a trap door, accepting that type of way of lifestyle when that's not how none of those people got here. I'll only leave it at that because what another person does to their body is their business, but at the same time, that ain't how we got here. I like to leave that closing statement that let's find a way to make our family and our unit stronger instead of allowing other people to dictate to us how to make it weaker. I am you.
I am you. Okay, family. This will close out part 2. Are you marriage minded or just looking for fun? I really do hope that you listen and gain some perspective, drop some seeds. Of course, you are free to make your own decisions, but I hope that you take into consideration the righteousness that we spoke about on how we treat each other, how we go about our daily business, and if we really want freedom, we have to change our behavior and our mindset. Polygamy is not for everybody. Many of us are practicing it in the wrong way, even today. And I hope at the end of the day, you look at your children and see the future, and you pass on to them a different today and tomorrow. That's all I can say on that. Pass on a different today and tomorrow, because it's not us, it's them. Thank you for listening to another live stream broadcast, Women's Corner TV. I just want to shout out Brother Adonis. He left a message that he had to bounce. His battery was running low. I appreciate your contribution. Sister Angelica left a message she had to attend to her children. So we never be upset on that. And greetings, peace and blessings, love and light. Peace.
Bye.